start again? I'm so sorry, I haven't prepared this.
That's okay.
All right, so this presentation is the result of an effort that the Multicultural Committee put on campus to bring awareness about diversity, in particularly LGBTQ diversity, and to speak more openly to students about this in informal and formal contexts. One point that we need to understand is this muddle up between sex, gender identity, gender expression, and sexuality or sexual orientation. They're located differently, they have nothing to do with one another, right? So assumptions that transgender people are also gay are absolutely ridiculous. So once the students can understand this, they can move forward with analyzing actual cases. The case that we looked at and that we organized a session on was the tragedy that happened in Orlando over the summer, where at the Pulse Club, 49 individuals lost their lives as a result of a person who attempted to shoot and kill all these people. It is important to remember in the wake of such tragedies that these individuals have names that actually matter. We tend to be immunized when tragedy occurs to large numbers and to sympathize when we see just one person. For example, think about the Syrian child, right, washed up on the shores. But we tend to forget that individuals, that's good, individuals can, in a group, also matter. They also have their own particular stories and their particular faces. So we wanted students, the student community, to understand this and to be able to identify with this particular community. A lot of these individuals that lost their lives were Puerto Rican, but they were also obviously American. So we organized a talk where three students that you'll see in a minute took leadership and put everything together, and they led a very productive conversation, very difficult conversation on campus. We just wanted to do something about it and not just to let it pass, even if we got to talk about it so many months later. One of the things that was important was to treat these people both in their lives and in their death with the dignity that people deserve, no matter what. We discovered that the silver ribbon is the ribbon that commemorates the death of LGBTQ people as a result of hate crimes. So we manually sewn together 100, actually over 100 such ribbons. We also watched Anderson Cooper breaking down and crying on national television as he spoke about each of the individuals that lost their lives, naming them by name. Another important component of this tragedy is the actual perpetrator, Omar Mateen. Traveling back from my gay friend's wedding, the day of the incident, when we learned about the incident, all we could pray for was, let this not be a Muslim guy. And of course, it was a Muslim individual. Now the problem with that is, of course, that this attracted a spur in Islamophobic reactions all across the United States, blaming this on the religious radicalization that didn't allow this individual to cope with his own identity or not. That might have been the case. Nonetheless, if you take the story away from the actually murdered people, they no longer matter, right? So I think that it is important to speak about LGBTQ identities in the context of religion. I'm not a theologian, but I'd like to work with people more informed in those realms to be able to sort of like bring an understanding on campus in an intellectual way. It is also important to discuss about all sorts of movements that led to the gain of civil rights in the LGBTQ community, such as the Marriage Act, when we saw people coming together and understanding that families can happen in any shape or form. And to have a family is a privilege. We shouldn't think about families in strict, rigid forms. They can combine any sort of individuals if the basis is commonality and love and respect. That's about dignity, and everybody deserves to be treated the same way. Another reason why talking about these issues is really important is because these issues affect legislation in the United States. Currently, only 32 states offer protection to LGBTQ employees at their workplace. You see in Pennsylvania, only state employees are protected by federal law. This brings to mind all sorts of other movements for equality and rights. Reproductive movements are important because they define one's sexual identity, gender expression, and sex. They inform the ways in which society accepts or rejects some of these premises, and who gets to decide on behalf of whom how people should behave on account of their bodies. There's also another more complication that arises when somebody identifies as bisexual. Bisexuality is typically not well accepted in either heterosexual or homosexual communities because these people are always asked to explain their choices. Of course, the whole question of being gay is often questioned. People ask you, so when did you decide to change? What made you change? What made you choose? But sexuality is not a choice. It's so much more complicated in terms of who you choose as your sexual partner. A lot of decision-making processes go into that. It is important that we also intellectualize the discussion and we look at the very generous body of gender studies and queer studies, and I've been fortunate enough to teach that this semester with gracious support from my dean and provost in an honors class, English 104. Because of these actions, individuals on campuses, students, but not only staff and faculty, can also feel that they're valued by the larger community and they can come together, not only at big universities such as Cornell. Am I nervous? But also at St. Francis. This effort could not have happened without the help of honor students Regan Stubbs, Shelby Jameson, and Abby Bowen. And I think you health science people might recognize a couple of names here. So thank you very much for your attention.
Roxana, that's a hard act to follow. But it's also a good one because your presentation actually really kind of connects to mine in a good way because you used a lot of really great, powerful images, and that's what I'm going to talk about. So my presentation is Making Information Stick, Why a Picture is Worth 1,000 Memories. So I also got a little bump from Kurt as well. So I'm going to talk to you about how we present information to our students with slides typically, or some kind of a tool to help students gather that information. I'm going to tell you how images can help you actually increase retention of that information. So we're a very visual society. When we look around, we expect to be able to just like zero in and kind of get what we need. We're very, information overloaded. So we kind of look for things like infographics and commercials that kind of speak to us. And that's what our students need to do when we are presenting them information. There's something called the picture superiority, which is when you look at a picture, our brains are actually better at remembering a picture than they are at remembering text. So if we show images that go along with the information that we give them, images are going to destroy text and oral presentation every single time. So if I give you something just in text, you are likely to remember about 10% of it tomorrow. If I add an image with that text, you will remember 65% of that information tomorrow. So just that little bit of an added tool, because text is actually, our brains take it in as tiny pictures, which is why it makes it harder to remember. So this is just a little bit of background. So we've been looking at this for like the last 100 years. These are some quotes that you obviously can't read in 20 seconds. But it basically says that images are dually encoded or encoded in various ways, and that is why our brains are able to bring them back much more quickly than just text. So quick test, look at this stuff on the screen. You have like 2 seconds. Okay, so what was on that side? Orange. What color? Orange. What was that side telling you?
Blue, rectangle.
Wow, you guys are pretty good. Okay, but that was a little more mumbly. The first one was a lot quicker. So basically we got the image, we got it like that, right? When we had to read and put it all together, it's a little bit harder. So here's some good techniques you can use that are really simple. So present one thought at a time. Instead of having a slide with bullets that's kind of serving as like an outline for what you want to tell them, one at a time. Just go through them, one right after another. Present one thing at each slide because we can't really listen and read at the same time, so one at a time works better. Include only the most relevant text. So instead of long passages or, again, lists, things like that, just put the most relevant text on there. You fill in the rest with your voice. And then your oral presentation connects to that picture for your student, and they will be more likely to recall that later. Invoke some kind of an emotional response. So we're very emotional beings, right? That's how we respond to things. So It doesn't have to be sadness or anger or anything like that. But it could just be something visceral. So if I say, what's 100 grams of fat, and I show you a giant Big Mac, that's going to mean more to you. You're going to be able to internalize that better. So here's a bad example of a kind of semi-common old kind of PowerPoint slide where I have like a lot of data on here. It's about garbage cleanup on the beach. You know, I have lots of numbers on here. It's very busy, right? It's kind of making me a little distracted when I'm trying to look at it. So this is kind of the bad slide. This would be a better slide. Okay, so I took the same information and I made it graphical. So now there is a picture involved. I can kind of see the overall comparison. You know, I'm gathering a little bit more from it, but we can do even better than that. I also got rid of the busyness, right? So less distraction on the background of that slide. But we can even do better than that. So this one, we get those visual images. So now I feel something a little bit more about these things, right? There's that garbage, it's gross, it's yucky. So now I'm starting to kind of connect with, and these big numbers. I would fill in the rest of the information for the student on this slide. But that's the most important thing that they need to see is, this is the biggest number on the top, and this is the item. But then this one really invokes that emotion. So we're looking at this beach. We love the beach, beaches are great, and now it's all gross, right, with cigarette butts, and this is how much we remove. So that's going to really spark that emotion in the student, and they're going to be likely to remember that piece of information later a little bit better. So there's some things that you can actually do that will distract from this image using, you know, mentality, because if you do it, but you don't do it, or you do kind of poorly, it's going to have the opposite effect. So something that's too small, so I can't really see it, I'm trying to figure out what it is, that's distracting me from what I'm trying to hear you tell me. Other things is too pixelated. You try to get a picture, you like the picture, but it's too small, so you like make it really big and it gets all yucky looking like that. Use something different or try to use it smaller in like a little bit more of an appropriate way to use it. You know, if you're trying to figure out what it is, you're going to kind of get distracted from that as well. Image is a stock photo, and you have the kind of, you know, yucky thing on top of it. Again, it's just a distraction. It kind of looks a little lazy, you know, like maybe you didn't try really hard. So maybe try to find something different or something that doesn't have it. But I see people do that all the time, actually, where they have an image like that. And then finally, the last one is the image is distorted. So you pick something, but then when you go to use it, you actually kind of stretch it out, or you lose the proportions. And again, anything that's going to detract from the purpose of the image is just going to kind of take away what you were attempting to do. Maybe not all of the way, but in some ways, you know. So it's best to try to pick images that are really good. So where do you find them? So there's good subscription services out there. There's two that I am on mailing list with. They're called Upsplash and Death to the Stock Photo. They send you gorgeous, big, nice HD photos like this one here. Flickr, you can even go in and Google Images and change the licensing so you can pick things that are freely accessible, although we're teachers, so if you use it in the classroom, it's not going to be a big deal. So the too long didn't read is just to present one thought at a time, include only the most relevant text, and try to invoke emotions, and that's the best way that you can use images with your students. And again, the purpose of this is just so that the student has something to connect that data or that fact that you gave them with, that they may be more likely to recall later. So you have 20 seconds if you have any questions. That's my last slide. All right, thank you.
I'm up next. I'm Deborah Budash. I am the program director of the Master of Health Science program. We're an completely online master's degree program. My dissertation study was looking at persistence, how our students balance their busy lives as adult learners to persist in a master's degree program online. The study was conducted in late 2014 through early 2015. It involved 8 volunteer students in the MHS program, and 6 faculty members were also interviewed for their perspectives on the same issues. So that could be considered one weakness of the study, is that we had the best of the best students who volunteered to participate. My findings aligned grossly with the literature, and that was there were 4 main categories of things to consider to foster best persistence. That was thinking about the characteristics of your students, what your instructors do, how your courses are designed, and considerations of the program and supporting the unique needs of online learners. Some characteristics of persistent learners. These students are typically adult learners, so they're working, they have families, very busy lives. They plan, and they plan a lot to be successful. All of the students said in one way or another they downloaded the course materials, the syllabus, the assignment tables. They laid everything out and they plotted it in their planners so they could see when things were due. If they had a life event, maybe they worked ahead, maybe they talked to their instructor and said, "Can I please have an extra day?" But they planned a lot. They also knew themselves and they knew why they were in the program. They knew what they were good at, they knew what they weren't good at, they were good at knowing when to ask for help, and they understood what their goal was. They knew why they were putting themselves through the online program amidst their busy lives. So when they had difficulty with an assignment, they kept their eye on the goal. And what was interesting is most of the students, their goals were kind of vague. They believed that they would just have better opportunity by being in the program, not that they'd land a particular job. They were very willing and resilient. They were open to learning, they were open to collaboration, and they didn't let obstacles stand in their way. And they didn't perceive difficulties as obstacles. They plowed right on through. Interestingly, many people think that online learning isn't very social, but that wasn't the case with our students. They valued very much the community that they were part of, and they felt a responsibility to it, to their instructors and to their classmates, to the extent that they would wait to post their discussion boards. And if there was a gap in some of the responses, they would look to try and fill those gaps to make the learning experience better. It was really interesting. They very much valued and were engaged in the social aspect. In terms of things that instructors could do to foster persistence, the top thing was that the online instructor was very present. They were very invested in the course. They were part of the course. They would engage in the discussions or the collaborative kinds of things. Sometimes they were very active, but sometimes they stepped back and let things happen. Sometimes they had to get in there and redirect if someone was way off base, but they were there and they were reliably there and very involved. Their responses, the instructors' responses, were very timely. There was a reliability factor. If a student had a question with an assignment, they had an assurance that they would get an answer in a particular amount of time, and that was really important. In the MHS program, we operate on accelerated semesters. So the 7 weeks go really fast, and a previous assignment, you need that feedback for the next one. So you really needed to get your answers quickly. So timely responses were important. High-impact feedback was found to be very important to persistence. And what I mean by that was the students really valued both positive, tell me what I did well as constructive feedback, oh, what didn't I do well? They wanted feedback that was action-oriented. Okay, how do I fix this? Help me, give me examples, how do I fix this? And they liked the developmental aspect of it, almost a partnership. Course design was the third characteristic that was identified as an important feature to help persistence. And that is the course is sequenced such that more simple or basic tasks were requested at the beginning, technology skills as well as content manipulation kinds of things, and then gradually more complex. And it was scaffolded off of what the adult learner knew. You built on what they already know. The course design was logical and intuitive. If you have a Start Here button, it's logical to think that maybe the syllabus is there and the things you need to start. Our courses are developed so that there's a course content folder and then weekly folders with all the content in there. So logically, you would go there to find out your to-do list for each week. Consistent design elements, all of our courses are developed so that they look the same way. That lessened the cognitive load for the students, so when they're new to a course, they don't have to learn the course. They can focus on the content because 5 days in they have assignments due. So our courses all look the same. And then how the course is designed The features, the educational technology features are very much aligned and in tune to what the assignments are. They match the learning objectives. Again, if the objectives are social in nature, there are maybe discussion boards or wikis or things that foster that social encounter. So next, what can programs do to foster persistence for online learners? This one is talking about attending and recognizing the online learners and that their needs are different and providing different ways to provide them the support. Email, phone calls, different hours because our students are in different time zones, being flexible to meet their needs. Flexible policies. One of the quotes that a faculty member offered was, the work still has to be done in the courses, but there are many times that how the work is done is okay. So as long as the student was working with us, we would be flexible on, as long as it didn't happen with every assignment, we'd be flexible with due dates and things like that if their meeting is halfway. Another faculty member mentioned how important consistency with faculty and staff was so that those social connections could be established with students. And that was very important to both students and faculty. So this graphic is, the adult learner, they're balancing so many things and their lives are so fluid. So helping them to balance on top of all of this change, the flexible policies, the things that instructors do, the student characteristics and the way the programs support them really can work together to help keep them balanced. So all four of those areas can help students. There's a stock photo, sorry. But it was so good. It had the red in it. But can help them be successful. And so this last one, very conscious attention to those four areas can help students, adult learners that we're particularly talking about, achieve their longer term, lifelong education goals. And it really is mission impossible. Okay, thank you.